Welcome everybody to episode 4 of the Timely Pursuits channel. I'm Azad.
And I'm Kevin.
And we're here to deliver this casual and informative, opinionated and superfluous show where we talk about horological happenings and our watch collecting lives. How are you, Kevin?
I'm doing very well. Can't complain. It's just a bit grey at the moment, a bit miserable, but things are okay. How's things with you?
Pretty good as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm really getting fed up of this horrendous weather that we're having in the UK. Very envious of some of my friends that are currently holidaying in warmer climates, shall we say. But it's been a fairly quiet week on the events front, although I've spent a lot of time either editing or chasing a certain brand about a pre-ordered watch that hasn't turned up. And when it did finally turn up, it turned up faulty. That will save that story for another day, I think.
Yes, I'm very sorry for you.
So, Kevin, what have you got on your wrist today?
Today, I've got on the Tissot PRX Booker edition. They produced about 18 months ago. Very, very nice. It's blue dial, stainless steel, with plated gold on the bezel. Lovely piece. I think it's limited to 888 worldwide. Very, very nice. I do wear this one a lot as well. What have you got on today?
So I'm wearing a Casio titanium full metal virtual armor, I believe they call it. This is one of the G-Shock releases from a couple of years ago. I've decided to go all 80s today as a child of the 80s. So Casio G-Shocks. I don't know if you can see the t-shirt as well, the Ghostbusters t-shirt as well. I don't know. I'm just in that mood today.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
On to the news and new releases segment of the show. And Kevin's going to be kicking us off with a new release from Grand Seiko.
Yes, this is my favourite release of the week or the past couple of weeks so far. It's the Mountainscape, not Manscape, Mountainscape Grand Seiko 65th anniversary. It's a high beat movement celebrating the view of, believe it or not, Mount Iwate once again. It's a 40mm case based on their Evolution 9 series. It's a wonderful piece on their ever brilliant steel. It's got a lug width of 22mm. That dial, though, is stunning. I love that almost ice blue dial. It's beautiful, and the way it radiates from the centre, it's a stunning piece. It's limited to 1,200 pieces worldwide, and it's coming out in May. What are your thoughts on this particular piece?
Very good looking piece. I think Grand Seiko really knows how to do special dials. And this one I think is one of their better ones. They've saved it for this 65th anniversary edition. And I think it's going to be a lot of demand for it. So if you're watching this and you're interested, I suggest quickly get down to your boutique and try to get your name down for this one, because I highly doubt we're going to get much more than double digits in the UK for it.
I do like this piece. It's got the in-house high beats movement. They call it the 9SA5, which is slightly different to the standard one. However, does that justify the price this is being sold at? It's now retailing at about £9,500.
So Kevin, we recently had the releases of the Rikka and the Shunbun, slightly different movements, of course, and quite different price points as well. So I appreciate this is a special edition and it's limited as well, but how does this one stack up to those two that were released just recently?
The one released a couple of weeks ago, the Shunbun, has a different movement to the one released in this new limited edition version. The movement in the Shunbun is a 55-hour power reserve compared to the limited edition 80-hour power reserve. Now, the other difference is obviously the price. Would you pay an extra £3,000 for a longer power reserve? It's open for discussion. Please leave your comments down below. But what are your thoughts, Azad?
Well, that's a hefty price increase just for an extra 30 hours of power reserve. And frankly, unless you are somebody who regularly puts their watch down and picks it back up, I don't think it's going to matter that much. I wonder if most collectors now especially those that rotate their watches quite frequently, do you really need such a long power reserve at all?
Yes. I mean, when I pick up a watch, it's generally run out. So I have to set it, put the dates correctly, set the time, and wind it. So I'm in a fortunate position where I have a number of watches, so they're in constant rotation. So by the time I've put one down, come back to it in however long, 5 days or 10 days even, it needs to be reset anyway. So the power reserve is not really a major requirement for me.
Well, it's a cracking piece, and I think for the hardcore collectors, they will certainly go for it. And as I mentioned already, I think demand will be quite high for this one. You won't see many of these around, even with the significant price premium compared to some of the more regular models. Let's move on now to a new release from Baltic. So again, back to you, Kevin.
So Baltic have produced a limited edition run of 200 pieces from the Hermétique range. It's in conjunction with Enduropale. Now, this is to do with a 3-hour motorbike race taking place in the very near future. It's an interesting piece. They call it a multi-time zone watch, but it's just got a rotating internal bezel which you can set the time to, as well as the normal hour hands and minute hands. So it's a colourful piece, don't get me wrong. It's 37 mil. It's not really for me because of the size, but it's an interesting piece. I'm sure you'd like it, Azar, because you like Baltic a lot, don't you?
I like their designs, certainly. And I think you've seen the previous Hermétiques in person, right? When they first were released?
That's right. I have seen them. And to be perfectly honest, it's extremely good value for money compared to the other brands which have produced a similar designed watch where the crown is actually flush with the case. I'm thinking of Omega, which I think retails at north of £50,000, if memory serves me right. And I know that Christopher Ward has done a similar version, which is, I think, is round about the £1,500 mark. So that's much more affordable. But this one's even cheaper. It retails in at about £550 on the rubber strap. And obviously you pay more for the bracelet, the beads of rice, and their other bracelets they've got within their range.
Yeah, I mean, there are some costs being cut in various areas in order to be able to get that price as low as it is. It has a Miyota movement, right?
It does have a Miyota movement. It's slightly different compared to a Swiss movement. They are noisier. It's cheaper to manufacture and install in their watches. It's a nice piece, don't get me wrong. It's not for me because of the 37 mil, but yeah, I'm sure they will sell out the 200 limited edition numbers very, very soon.
Well, a very similar watch to the Baltic Hermétique that we've just discussed is an upcoming release from microbrand Direnzo watches. This brand is spearheaded by its owner, Sergio Direnzo, who has been on fire releasing hit after hit. If you go to the website now, you will find most of the models are totally sold out. But he has got a release coming up for the start of March, which we wanted to highlight to give people plenty of time to prepare for it. This is absolutely not sponsored in any way. I just want to make that super clear. But let's talk about the new DR7 Universo. In terms of specifications, this is actually very similar in size to the Baltic watch that we just discussed, 37.5mm in diameter. Again, sorry about that, Kevin. We'll have to just wait for a larger one to come out at some point. Case material, standard stainless steel. However, it does come with a scratch-resistant coating, which raises the HV rating up to 800. Brilliant for keeping your watches looking absolutely pristine over the long term. It comes with a pretty standard flat sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating. Water resistance is 10 atmos or 100 meters, and lug to lug of 45 mil, height just under 11 millimeters as well. So super thin, very nice and compact. Now, where it differs from the Baltic is it comes with a Sellita SW200 elaborate grade movement. Also comes with a Jubilee style bracelet, although it has also been coated in the scratch resistant coating, and the fold over clasp as well, which includes a on the fly adjustment produced by Nodex. Again, coated with that hardness coating. But I think what's really important with Direnzo watches is the design. What a beautiful dial he has created. The shape of the dial, the way that it curves around the inside, is a feature of his designs. And if you look back through some of the other models he's done, this is clearly part of the design language that he has. The DRZ DRZ is going to come in 7 different color variants. So there's something for absolutely everybody. There's going to be a grey and white, a burnt orange, a purple and white, blue and white, black and white, green and white, and I think the one that's probably going to be the most popular is going to be that aventurine dial with white. Now, Sergio has said that he's going to be making both date and no date options for all of the color variants except the aventurine. The aventurine will be a no date only. So a lot of variety there. I appreciate the size might be a little bit challenging for you, Kevin, but what do you think of this release?
You're right about the size. For me, that's too small, but that aventurine version is amazing. They all look fantastic, and that design language that is got through all of the watches it's very unique. The way it curves up into the bezel, it's stunning, absolutely stunning. I like it a lot. We have to be quick. You can purchase it from the 1st of March 2025. Delivery will start on the 3rd. As far as I'm aware, it's not limited edition. Is that right?
They're always limited. They're
always limited.
They sell out and then he moves on to doing something else.
Yeah. Right. But there is no specific number he's mentioned in his website.
He does re-releases. If he doesn't say limited, then in theory he could bring them back. But typically he moves on to doing something different.
That's good to know. So if you definitely want one and don't want to wait until if he re-releases them, the 1st of March, get your orders in then, and delivery starts on the 3rd of March. But yeah, that aventurine dial is stunning. And I probably would go with the purple as my next choice. So because I don't have a purple watch in my collection. But yeah, why can't you make them bigger? Make them bigger, please. Please make them bigger. Sorry.
You should look at some of the other models because he has pretty much the same dial, maybe slightly different configuration, certainly the same colors, but in some of the other models. So I have the purple dial in the 04 series. Fantastic watch. Reminds me a lot of the Girard-Perregaux Laureato, but in a rounder shape.
Oh, wow. I need to look into this, definitely. What size is that one? Can you remember?
I think it's 40 mil. So a tip for anybody interested in this, get onto Facebook and find the Direnzo Watch Club Collectors Group and sign up for the notifications there, because there's a pretty good chance you'll be able to get in and put your order in nice and early before it's released to the general public.
That's a very, very good tip. I will look at that, definitely. And I'll look at the other collections that he's produced and see if there's anything that fits my wrist, basically. Does look nice. Oops.
These releases are going to be priced at 750 Swiss francs, so about £680 sterling, although that doesn't include taxes. The aventurine dial, however, has got a slight upcharge. It's 780 Swiss francs, which I still think is fantastic value, especially for the level of finishing, the design work, and frankly, a Swiss movement with the hardened coating as well. Kevin, compared to the Baltic, how does this one stack up?
I think on a price point, this Direnzo is a better watch. It's got a better movement. It's a better watch. However, in both instances, you have to try them on because one may feel better for you. It may look better on your wrist. It may sit better on your wrist. You just don't know. So just on the spec wise, the Direnzo wins hands down. But obviously, you may prefer the other versions of Baltic watches that have come out as well, or the new limited edition, or the Direnzo watch. It's totally up to you, but just do not go on spec alone. Try them both on if you have the opportunity.
While Kevin enjoys sitting on the fence, I will proudly say that I'm definitely a bigger fan of Direnzo watches than Baltic watches. I have owned 2 Baltic watches in the past, and unfortunately, I ended up getting rid of them, mainly because they developed issues essentially with how they were put together. So I've never had any problems with the Direnzo watches, and I own several of those. So definitely Team Direnzo here. Moving on now to a little bit of news, and this time focusing in on a former watch dealer / YouTuber as well, who has come back into the headlines for the wrong reasons. Kevin, what can you tell us about this?
Well, obviously, as you're referring to Anthony Farah, the Timepiece Gentleman. He's finally been sentenced to 70 months in jail for fraud in selling watches, basically. Embezzling just under $6 million. He got caught eventually. It wasn't a good time in the watch industry. He was on YouTube for a good couple of years and, going through the trials and tribulations of selling watches in the USA. He was basically based out of Los Angeles. However, things took a turn and he first of all split from his business partner and then relaunched. But basically, it was just a glorified Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people lost out trying to sell their watches through him. And to explain a little bit more, essentially what he was doing is he was taking on watches on consignment, so advertising those watches for sale, and then he would take roughly a 5% commission based on the amounts he was selling. And if you go back, I don't know if his YouTube videos are still up or not, but what he was showing in those was a bit of a day in the life of how he operated. It was all super glamorous. He would pick up an AP or something very expensive, travel across the country, sell it, earn that commission, and then he'd be out that night, having very expensive steaks and doing all sorts of nefarious activities, which of course cost a small fortune. The indication was, the image he was trying to put out was he was incredibly successful in what he was doing. But in reality, all that seemed to be happening was he was taking the watches, potentially selling them, maybe not selling them, and then not passing on the proceeds to the people who actually owned the watch, who were trying to sell those watches. So unfortunately, it looks like those people are out of luck. That money is gone as far as we're concerned. But of course, he's being punished for that.
Yes, he is. I didn't realise he was actually taking out loans based on the watches as well. He was using them as equity to get money, even further money, to fund his lavish lifestyle. I mean, I remember seeing videos of him picking up a watch in a private jet, going somewhere else, having dinner, as you say. He drove Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Porsches. Yeah, it looked very, very glamorous. Unfortunately, it was very fraudulent. Yes, shame, but good riddance. That's all I can say.
Absolutely good riddance. Absolutely. Now, this neatly brings us on to our timely topic for the show, which is thinking about how to buy used watches. This was a suggested topic from Mick Stevens, one of the viewers of the channel, to really think about some of the dangers out there in navigating the various platforms that people can buy watches from. So, Kevin, what's been your experience in buying used watches?
Well, my experience in buying used watches has been very limited compared to other people. I've only bought one watch used. I tend to buy brand new watches from boutiques or dealers that I know of on the high street generally. So the only watch I've bought secondhand is my first generation X33 Omega watch. By the time I decided to buy it, which was about 5 years ago, it was definitely out of production. And the only way I could buy it was either eBay, Chrono24, or maybe a dealer that I knew who had one in their possession. Now, I decided to go down the eBay route, and I have to stress this was prior to their certification series, which they are doing at the moment when it comes to watches. So it was a bit fraught, and I decided to go down that route because I knew a bit about Omega and X33 watches, and generally, as it was a quartz, it either worked or it didn't, apart from, making sure the pushers worked. Other than that, I tend to stay away because you are going into a whole new world. If you don't know what you're doing, it can be very, very expensive. So, what advice can you give? Because you've had a lot more experience than I have.
Yeah, I think you could benefit from some of this advice as well, Kevin. So
Thank you.
let's break it down a little bit. So I would say there are several ways you can go if you're looking for a watch. Obviously, boutiques straight away or authorized dealers is pretty much guaranteed the best possible quality and, importantly, protection for your own rights as a consumer. I think that's the main thing that you need to be thinking about when you're buying such an expensive piece. And I would say you can go either with a dealer or you can go to an online platform like Chrono24 or eBay, although quite a few dealers are already on these platforms, so you're not necessarily always taking a big risk by going through those, and we'll talk about those risks in a moment. And then the most risky avenue is to go through a private sale, so forums or Facebook, where actually there's very little protection at all. So let's start off by talking about dealers. And sadly, there are some bad dealers out there, as we've just discussed, but there are quite a lot of good dealers as well. And hopefully we will try to interview one of our favorite dealers at some point in a future episode. You can go with some of the big ones that are out there. In the UK, Watchfinder is probably one of the biggest. There are a host of others as well. The most important bit of advice I can give you is to buy the dealer and not the watch. And that is, yes, an old adage. It's said quite frequently out there amongst collectors, but it holds true. What you need to do is research that dealer and really look at the feedback they've received. Have they always stood by their products and by their services? Do they offer a return? Do they offer a warranty on that used watch? Really have a think about how comfortable are you in dealing with that individual. Hopefully you're receiving a fair price as well for that service. That dealer will be charging a certain amount of commission in their selling of the watch. Once you've done your research on that dealer, you want to reach out, ask lots of questions. Don't be afraid to do that. They should have a good amount of information on their website or chosen platform, and hopefully some very good pictures, and if you're lucky, some videos as well. Hopefully you'll also have a chance to visit the dealer and go to a showroom or meet at a convenient location so you can inspect the watch. And if there's any doubt about the legitimacy of that watch, ask if you can go to a dealership or a boutique to have them look it over to give you some certification. But to be honest, a good dealer that you can trust would be more than happy for you to return that watch if there is a problem with that authentication. Usually it's not an issue, but it can happen. So do ask those important questions. If you do go through the online platform route, then you have the authentication program with eBay for watches over a certain price, I believe £2,000 or so in the UK. That means that the watch goes directly to them. They check it over, make sure everything is present and correct, and then ship it on to you. If at that point you're unhappy with the watch or there's a problem with the watch, then there's an element of protection both for the buyer and the seller as well. And there is, of course, various guarantees there. So even if the seller does not accept returns and you find there is something wrong with the watch, they will hold that money in escrow and potentially refund you if you can show that there is an issue with that watch. So there is an element of protection that is going in there. Chrono24 offers a similar service as well, although I'm less clear about the details of that, and I believe there is an additional cost involved if you want that level of protection. eBay, though, is becoming very popular now because certainly in the UK, and I believe this was trialed in Germany, so it's in Germany as well, there are no selling fees for individuals. There are for dealers, but for individuals, those have all been removed. Although one of the pitfalls I just want to highlight that if you list a watch in the UK for sale and, for example, somebody in the US decides to buy it, then you will be charged international selling fees. There are fees involved at that stage. So just be aware those sales have to be to UK buyers. Now, naturally, with eBay and Chrono24, there is user feedback as well from previous sales. You can read through those. That's also very helpful in you being able to trust that seller.
That's very informative. But what about other platforms like forums? Do you think you can sell on those?
You can do, but you do have to build up a bit of a reputation for being a trustworthy member of that forum, be it Reddit or Facebook. You want to have a good record built up in terms of not only sales but purchases as well. That is helpful. And these forums tend to be quite self-regulated. So when there is an issue, it will be voiced within the forum, and suddenly somebody's reputation could go down the plug hole very quickly. So it's important to always, behave well, essentially, as a seller. However, as I've just said, something typically has to go wrong before the bad apples are found out. So there is certainly a lot more risk involved there. In terms of the advice I would give if you're dealing with a forum or through Facebook, ask the general group, has anybody dealt with this person before? Typically, people will then chime in and say, yes, buy with confidence or whatever. But that is based on real people who've dealt with that individual before. The other tip I would give is use PayPal, goods and services trading. Yes, it does cost a little bit of money, but it gives you that little bit of an insurance. In case something goes wrong, you can try to get a refund through PayPal through there. Don't offer bank transfers or friends and family transfers through PayPal unless you really, really know that person and you're super confident that what you're receiving is going to be up to scratch and they are a trustworthy individual. Ideally, meet up again, see the watch in person before agreeing to a transaction. If you follow these simple rules, I think you should generally be okay. One word of warning, though, is if you're buying something that's frequently forged, like Rolexes or APs, then you have to be so much more careful buying used. You really do need to be aware of how good some of these copies are out there. And I strongly suggest at that point, you need to be going through either a trusted dealer or a much larger agency, or even like a certified program, which Rolex has now obviously introduced with the likes of Bukhara.
That's amazing advice. Thank you very much for that, Azad. Touching on that as well, there are specific forums you can have a look on and sell on. There is the Omega forum, which obviously primarily sells Omega watches, but they have opened it up to other brands you can sell on and purchase from. And the same with the Rolex forum as well. Again, you can sell or purchase watches on there, but obviously you have to be very, very careful on who you purchase from, who you speak to, and who you can trust. So yes, be very, very careful. Do your due diligence all the time.
And obviously we wish you lots of luck out there in your watch collecting journey, because I think, buying and selling is a big part of it for everyone.
It certainly is. Certainly is.
Thank you for watching the Timely Pursuits channel. If you like this episode, please hit the like button, subscribe, and hit that bell icon to receive notifications of all future episodes. You can find me on Instagram under az.time or my other YouTube channel on aztime. And where can they find you, Kevin?
You can find me on Instagram mainly. That is Kevin_Roberts100. That's the best place to contact me if you want to chat, or if you want to come up with topics we can talk about in this YouTube channel.
Absolutely. Please remember to comment down below on your thoughts of the new releases, the topics that we've been discussing as well, or if you just have general suggestions about the show going forward. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.
Thank you very much. Bye.